So thanks for everyone for joining the meetup we've got. It's obviously resin art for back to school, teacher appreciation. I'm actually here, I'm your host Ian Faith, and with us is our resin expert Tim Phelps from iCoat. Tim's been in the industry for over 30 years working with different resins and epoxies, and if anyone sort of knows a little bit about him, he's actually nicknamed the Wizard. So Tim, maybe you can sort of give us a little bit more information on yourself and your sort of history working with resin.
Well, I've been doing epoxy since 1996, and we started formulating our own shortly thereafter, and we've been using them for years and years for garage floors and for countertops and for just a whole slew of different things. We manufacture probably 30 or 40 different kinds of epoxies that we've formulated for specific reasons. And lately we've found that there's the art segment that we've been in for quite a while. I've got hundreds of artists that buy from us, but they've always been after me to kind of package things in smaller packages and different types of colorants and things that are more artist specific. So we started working on that a couple years ago with a few other people, and are just recently kind of rolling that out after we make sure that everything works.
Right, and I'm hoping that we can get to a point where we can get back into doing this over at the iCoat studios, where we can actually do things in person and people can actually have a hands-on class where everyone actually can get their hands dirty and actually sort of see this happen in the flesh and see how how much fun it is to work with epoxy. So as I say, this is virtual, so what we're going to do is you can get one of these free iCoat artist t-shirts, so just hang on for this as we get through our presentation. But what we're going to do is just give you an overview of what it is, and then we're going to provide a few resources where you'll be able to see how to do this step by step in a video. There's also a notes section which the people who did this were able to sort of give us feedback on what they found, where they maybe would have done things differently the second time around. It's a great guide and extra lessons in how to do something different next time. So here's the bullets of what we're going to cover. Obviously epoxy resin art, it's fun and it's actually safer than most people think. Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about the safe use of epoxy? Because I know a lot of people think of epoxy, they think of glue, they don't think of resin, and they don't think of sculpting and creating. But give us a little bit of background on safety.
Well, it's always been important to us to manufacture products that are considered safe, and we've always adhered to LEED Platinum standards since they've come out, and formulated urethanes and epoxies and everything else that meet all those standards. Recyclable is important to us. We've always kind of worked with recycled products and some of the other products that we've developed. And we actually got featured on a TV show, the Extreme Home Makeover, because we met the standards of food safe on our epoxies years ago. And we have, obviously we've just improved on that. It's very safe. We use low amine resins and things like that so that there's not any smell or any problems that are associated with that. There's very, very few people that have an actual amine allergy, but some of the lower cost products that come from China, there's just really not a lot of that concern there. And then you see websites that are dedicated to tell you how dangerous epoxies are, but ours is not one of those.
Great. So back to school side of things is actually my son, who's 11 years old, was interested in making something for his teacher. So him and his niece were talking about it one night, and I showed them a few ideas on some of the things I'd seen, and they were just like, "Dad, can we do this? Can we make something?" So I said, this would be a great idea to have something that they could actually get together and see if it was something they could do, and it would show me through it, and it was amazing, the results. So we also reached out to Tim and asked him to give us some tips and tricks and guide us through the process, and you'll see that with the results that came out that having someone help you through this it gets a totally different result, and you'll be thrilled with the results you're getting over a situation where you're just maybe sort of stumbling through, maybe making a few mistakes. And then what the video will do, it'll walk you through, as I said, making your own back to school teacher appreciation gifts. And what we were making were basically paperweights, but they were really, really cool paperweights. So here's the family. This is my son on the right with his mom, and on the left is my niece and her mum as well. And this is the very first time they'd ever used this. We actually did it in the living room of our home. So it wasn't a super messy thing. We put a bit of parchment paper down on the table. Obviously with anything, if you're working with school glue or whatever and you're splashing it around, you're going to make a mess. But as long as you're being safe and just mixing normally and no one's being silly with it, there's really no mess at all. The kids didn't even use gloves. If they got a little bit on their hands, you just wiped it off with some paper towel, and if it got a little bit of sticky, baby lotion actually took it off real easy. And so, we followed the instructions, and what they were doing is they were creating something that they could give to their teachers, that they could put on their teachers' desks. They wanted something that was fun to make, and the cool thing is with this, and I'll probably hit for any of you parents out there, hours on Xbox doesn't cut it. Hours doing this with their parents, with each other, was so much fun. It got them to be creative, it got them to interact, it got them to learn, rather than just sitting there in front of their computer screen. And these are some of the things that they created. These are still in the silicone molds. But as you see, what they did is they started with a base. They started adding little bits and pieces in, like Rachel, the young girl, wanted to do something that had a very pink theme. And so she found all the different pink crayons, the pink erasers, the pink paper clips, and obviously glitter as well, and added those things in. Winston wanted to be more on the cool side of things, so his was obviously more of a green scheme, and it just came out beautifully. But it was awesome just seeing them go through the process and actually build these things. It takes a little while for the epoxy to set up. It's pretty crystal clear when it's done, and actually we're in the process at the moment, because obviously, like anything you build, there comes a point where you want to finish it to make it really sparkle. Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about how once these are finished, we polish these up, and then we'll go back to letting everyone get information on walking through making their own one of these?
Well, for me, that's the fun part, making it look just complete. These are something that I have a lot of artists that have made, but I've not actually made coasters before. But it's just like any other epoxy. So if you've got little imperfections in them, you can just sand them off. If you've got a little scratch here and there, you can sand that off and kind of polish it out a little bit. It's nothing that's crazy hard to do, but it's just a lot of fun doing the little detail work after it's all done to make it exactly what you want. Then you could get real crazy and dome the top and everything else like that if you just really wanted to. There's just endless possibilities with it. So that's really the fun part, is just doing a little touch up afterwards.
Right. And someone actually had asked, who couldn't attend the meeting, they sent back an RSVP, and they had a question. They said, is it true that basically what this is just liquid plastic? Is that what we're talking about when we're talking about epoxies and resin?
Yeah, in a very generic sense, it would be considered a liquid plastic for sure.
So here's what these things look like when you pop them out of the molds. They're really cool. They're the size of maybe a hockey puck. You can do them different thicknesses as well. They're not too heavy, they're not too light, but they're great because, as I say, these ones were done nearly an inch thick, so they could hold the crayons and the erasers, and even like one of these has got a pencil sharpener in it as well. And it's really, really fun to see the kids make this thing, and actually once we popped them out of the molds, they were very thrilled on showing their friends and wanting to take pictures and sharing it on their cell phones with each of their friends with the things that they've made. And so they're actually making these, and each one of the kids has actually got a teacher in mind who they're actually making them for. The ones the mums made, we're also going to donate them to our local schools, maybe to the principals over there, or as we say in England, the headmistress or the headmaster. And we're going to give them that as a gift for, all that they've done. Because, these teachers, they didn't come into the COVID moment being really high tech. So it's really a nice bit of appreciation to go to them and actually say thank you for all that they've actually done. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free to open up your microphone and ask Tim any questions. I've got some questions that were asked by a few people who couldn't, but if anyone wants to go first, as I say, feel free to open up your mic and just fire away.
So what are your price points on the smaller batches?
Yeah, we're competitive with anybody else in the industry, and obviously the larger sizes that you buy, the more, the less expensive per unit it is, just because of the cost of putting it into smaller containers. But we're certainly more than competitive with anybody else in the market on pretty much any size straight across the board. We package everything right here in Phoenix, and we have a manufacturing plant here as well.
Hey Tim, is it true that yours is made in the USA?
Oh yeah, we make everything in the US.
Another thought is, Brian, with those resin molds, they probably cost. I actually tried to work it out. I think they ended up being like $6.50 for each of them. So I actually thought to myself, is $6.50 a piece for those things? Is that value? And then I thought of the amount of time it kept my kids off of Xboxes and off their computers, off their iPads, and to me, that at that point just seemed like a fantastic value.
Yeah, that kind of thing is practice. I totally get it.
So Tim, maybe you can talk to that. Brian was asking about food grade.
Yeah. Ours is considered food grade. There are certain standards that are set by the FDA that you have to meet, and we've always met all those obligations as far as food grade goes, and we'll continue that. And when we're developing something, there's also LEED Platinum, which is real important to me, where your products are just guaranteed to be safe, and that's a standard that we've always strived to meet, and we always have and we always will.
Cool, because I'm pretty sure this is turnable, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've got.
My real question.
Turning with it, they're making fishing rod lure covers, pool table things. Turnable is definitely one of the things that it is. When you're turning something, if you're doing it dry, then you probably would want to wear a mask because of the dust. Just like any other dust, you don't want to breathe that in. But if it's turning wet, then that wouldn't be something you need to worry about. And people do both.
But my real question, is it laserable?
That's a great question. But yeah, we did one that was shot with a laser, that a guy engraved stuff in there. So I'm certain it would be. You would probably have to experiment with that. And as far as the heat of the laser, you wouldn't want to do it where it would be so. You wouldn't want to leave it on the same area for very long. I'd probably think that you might want to go across it a couple of times instead of just once,
right?
Because it would back into itself. Epoxy softened with heat. This one has got a scorch resistance of 500 degrees, but certainly a laser is a lot hotter than that, and you could end up with it melting back into itself. But I think if you went some quick passes, I think you'd be fine on that.
Well, the real question on that is the off-gassing. Is it toxic gases that come off of that?
Well, it's plastic. So, I think you'd want to do that in a fairly well-ventilated area, or even, if there was a big concern and you were doing a big project, something small, I don't think it'd be an issue where I would be concerned about it. But if you were doing a massive laser engraving or something like that, you'd want to have it well ventilated, and then NIOSH equipment. Just the cheap, $25 NIOSH respirator would protect you from any of that anyway.
And then what kind of proportions are they mixed? Are they 1-to-1, 1-to-2, so on?
The one that he used there is a 1-to-1.
Yeah, 1-to-1.
We have epoxies that are, depending on application, I make probably market about 15 different epoxies, and they go anywhere from a 1-to-1 to a 4-to-1, and they're very specific for their uses.
Okay, then on uses, do you have any that are like flexible?
Yeah, I do. I have a flexible epoxy that we make in clear and several different colors. It's used for, say, when you're doing like the floor of a motorhome or a boat, where you're going to be, there's going to be a lot of movement, and you wanted a metallic floor or a chip floor or whatever. So you would need to have a flexible epoxy, a second deck on a house or whatever. You would need to have a flexible primer for that. So yeah, we do make flexible epoxies as well.
Excellent. Thanks.
So thanks everyone. Thank you, Tim, for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, sure.
Take care, everyone. Have a great night. So we're here today, and we're going to be doing some paperweights for teacher appreciation, and we're going to be using these really cool resin molds. And we've got with us today, we've got
Winston and Rachel.
And their mums, Tracy and Allison. Winston, why don't you tell us about some of the things that we've got that we're actually going to be using to make this with?
Okay, so we have a few supplies over here. We have some glitter, some different tool supplies that we're going to be putting in these resin molds. We have the resins over here, the resin where we're going to be mixing it. This is glitter. These are some erasers, paper clips, glitter, and crayons. And we have a pencil sharpener and a thumbtack. Okay, so the first step we gotta do is get the resins and mix them together in this. So
now, obviously this is resin, like people want to use gloves, they can use gloves, but if you're careful, you don't splash it around, it's fine. So how much of each do we mix together?
So there's resin A and resin B.
Yeah, so one of them's an epoxy and the other one's a hardener. So what we do here at iCoat is we make these products so they're food safe, they're non-toxic, they don't have any smells, and there's no VOCs in them. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix them together in this mixing bucket, and in there we're going to be able to have the same amount of A and B. And we've already sort of prepared this where in the bottom of the molds we've already got a small amount of resin to stop any of the items floating to the bottom, because the resin's actually quite light, so anything that's in it will actually float in it. So you've got to be careful. Now again, a little twist to stop the drips, and just pour it straight in there. Don't just let it go in slowly, don't splash it around, and just be careful with it. And then Winston, you're going to stir it. And if you're actually not using the whole bottle, if you do that little twist, it stops the drips from happening. And then stirring it. Winston, we talked about this earlier today. So when we stir it, what are we looking for in the consistency?
You don't want there to be so each resin A and B, they're a little different. So you'll be able to see if they're fully in together.
Yeah, so if you have parts that are cloudy and parts that are clear, or parts that are a little bit different colours here and there, that's where you're going to see it, that they're not actually mixing together properly. So there's no need to splash it, and there's a bit of a myth out there that you have to mix it for 5 minutes only. You don't have to do that. Resin actually starts to activate pretty quickly once it's actually stirred. So once it's actually stirred and we've actually got it done clear, we're going to put that to one side, and then we're going to start sorting out the different bits and pieces that we actually want to put in each of our resin molds. So Rachel, why don't you start picking through the bits and pieces that you want to actually put in your resin mold?
Okay. I'm doing pink kind of.
Ah, so you've got a real pink theme on your one?
Yeah, this is it says nice with a flower on it. And now I'm going to put a pink eraser to
But we've got the resin in the bottom, so now what we can actually do is if anyone wants some glitter the cool thing to do with the glitter is now put a little bit into the bottom of each of the things, if you want glitter. But you know how glitter comes out, you get a lot of it, so just maybe sprinkle a little bit in your hand, and then put some in, because you'll end up with way too much of it if you're not careful. So just so you know, we're actually in the living room of a home. We've just got a table. It's not really a messy game unless, you know, it's fun, but it doesn't have to be messy as long as you take care. We put some paper and taped it to the table, just some parchment paper, and that'll actually protect the epoxy from getting on there. And if anyone does get a little bit of epoxy on their fingers, the neat thing about it is it comes off kind of easy with just a bit of baby lotion, or you can use some alcohol as well, that'll actually take it off. Don't use water, it just makes more of a sticky mess. So yeah, so you can start now designing the way you want to put these things into your mold. Yeah, once you've got the design done for how you're going to put these things in there, the next good step is to think about what you're going to want on the bottom first, because the neat way to be is you'll put something in on the bottom first, and then we'll put a bit of epoxy on it. Then once you've got a bit of epoxy on it, the things that are going to go higher up, you'll actually put in later. So think of the things you want right on the bottom.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Or you know, this is like a real free art form. So if you feel like you've already got what you want, just actually, you know, just put them exactly where you want them. Okay, so one thing we're watching as we're doing this is making sure that things aren't sticking to the side of the molds, the silicone molds, because if things touch the side of the silicone mold, obviously the resin won't get around the side of them. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but they'll just be touching the edges. So we're just trying to stay away from having that happen. And then we're going to start putting the epoxy into some just solo cups. So you can start pouring it in, and it'll self-level. So it'll actually come out really even once it's done. You don't need to think too much about it, but it's always a neat idea to me. And make sure you leave like maybe a couple of millimeters at the top of it, and don't use all the resin if you're going to add more things in, because obviously it's going to push the resin up. Some people use rubber gloves, other people just, you know, put these things into the epoxy and just poke them down with an old plastic knife.
Oh, and I'm going to be putting...
So you can actually move things around. Now, before it sets up, you've got the chance to move things around, to push things from one side to another, move things from side to side. Nice.
I think I'm done with mine.
Okay, Winston, how's yours looking?
One more on top.
Okay. So if anyone's got any more epoxy in their things, yeah, that's it, Winston. It's the time to pour some more on. And see, so as you see, look, like, this is a really fun, creative thing to do. Plus, you end up making something that's really neat. You know, these things that they make great little teacher gifts, great little paperweights that you can actually, you know, have around, and people will remember that you actually did it when you do things with this. People use this epoxy for everything from, you know, tables to jewelry to pendants to skateboards. You know, they even seal artwork and photographs, you know, golf hole-in-ones, different little canvas ideas. It's a really neat artistic thing to just have some fun with and make things that end up being just really creative.
Can I put a little bit more in? Just a little more.
Yeah, no, leave a couple of millimeters at the top. Is that you want? Oh, Rachel, that looks really good.
Let me see yours. Wow. Oh, you put a lot of stuff in yours. Yours looks great.
Yeah, it's okay if it drips, right?
We need
Okay.
teacher appreciation
Yeah.
week. It should be kind of.
We just started a class, so we're going to give teacher appreciation.
Yeah.
We're giving
In the beginning.
Starbucks gift cards.
And one of these.
And one of these.
Cool. That's nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you push that one down?
Super out.
It just went in.
Winston, Rachel, was that fun?
Yeah. Yeah.
And would you do it again?
Yes, definitely.
And what teacher's going to get yours?
My music teacher.
Nice. Winston, which one's going to get yours?
I'm probably gonna give it to my science teacher.
Nice. Excellent.
Bye.